Today, I want to walk you through the single biggest mistake I see folks that are within 3 years of retirement make. It's that they spend their final working years obsessing over saving, over a dollar amount, and they never actually learn how to use the money they built. And when the time comes and they're ready to retire, guess what? They're not ready. There's no plan in place. It's just pure chaos. They haven't thought through what they're going to do in retirement, where they're going to spend their first dollar from, or whether they even have a real plan in place. And sadly, I've seen this mistake wreck hundreds of retirement plans. And here's the kicker: it rarely has anything to do with how much money they've saved. Rather, it's they don't have a plan in place. I'm Nick Covio, founder of Swell Financial, certified financial planner, and this is exactly why I do what I do. I enjoy helping people retire, and as I say, stay retired and help avoid this trap. Because here's what it comes down to. You've worked hard, you've saved, you've invested, you've done everything right, and retirement is supposed to be an enjoyable time, but without a plan, it can just turn into complete and utter chaos. So in this video, we're going to build a plan together. We're going to help you avoid those mistakes. So let's dive on in. Now, there's something about these final working years, call it 57, 58, 59, 60, that make them uniquely risky. It's that you're so close to the finish line, but this is where you maybe start to feel that pressure, because most people, they hone in on one thing, and that's just their account balance. But we know, if you've been watching the videos, that's just one piece of the equation. It's not the full picture. And the common questions I hear in this phase, regardless if they have 750,000 saved or 5 million, is how much can I safely spend? Do I actually really have enough? Can I retire next year? And this is even coming from, as I mentioned, people that I believe will never realistically spend, but they still ask those questions. And instead of focusing on those answers and spending that time to do the research, they default to what they've always done. They just keep working. They just keep saving. They're delaying retirement, as I call it, the just one more year syndrome, instead of preparing for how to actually spend and use their money. And here's the problem with that: is they miss all the critical signals. They blow through the stop sign because they're so focused on chasing more and more and more, and they forget to prepare for what's next, because it is a transition. We're not just going to go from 0 to 60. We have to prepare ourselves both mentally and practically in moving from saving mode into retirement ready mode. This is what it means to start figuring out, how much am I spending right now? How do we do this dress rehearsal? How do we start going through exercises of understanding, what am I going to spend? What big vacations do I have? How much money do I have? Where's that first dollar going to come from? And this is off paper when we start looking at some of the softer side and the softer skills of retirement. What are you going to do with all that time? We think of retirement as this verb and the idea of living into it. So you're only going to have an abundance of more time. And the idea is, how are we going to spend that time? And are we doing that practically today? Now listen, I get it. I know this may seem overwhelming. There's a lot of factors to think about in these final years leading up into retirement, right? Retirement's way more than just blindly throwing money into a target retirement account. It's taking into consideration things like, do I have enough saved up? What if there's a market crash right before retirement? How does that change my spending? Or what about taxes? And where do I pull my first dollar from? Or how do I think about healthcare, right? It's a lot. And if this sounds like you and you're not quite yet feeling ready, you're confident about your retirement, what I want you to do is click the link in the description below. You're going to answer a few questions on a survey, and I'm going to send you back a personalized LIM video showing you exactly things to watch out for, how to make your plan more confident. So go ahead, click on the description below, and I'll get you that video. Let's talk about why so many people make this mistake, that is waiting too long to shift from working in savings mode into being ready for retirement. Now, a lot of it stems from what people think retirement planning is actually supposed to look like, and what they've read or what they've been told, which is you need to save up right until your very last paycheck. Well, that's wise, but there's more to it. The more you save, the better, or the longer you work, the better, or what I talked about earlier, which is these arbitrary numbers, whether it's a balance on an investment statement, or it's an arbitrary age like 65 or 67, or maybe you're just unsure. You get those cold feet, so you just say, hey, one more year. Or here's my favorite one, which is, okay, we're now retired, so I have to make this drastic shift in my portfolio, and I need to move it all into something conservative because I can't take any risk. But here's the truth: those beliefs often lead to a lot of backfiring. And this is because, whether you realize it or not, in these years, your late 50s, early 60s, before your retirement, you're already playing a different game, especially in these years leading up. This right here is your dress rehearsal. And so what happens without proper planning? Well, people panic. People don't know what to do. They go to cash when the market drops by 15 or 20%. The stakes are higher and things feel really real, right? They push off retirement for another year. You know what? I'll think about it later. I have my job that feels safe. Or maybe they've already retired and they feel really scared. Now they hold off on traveling or giving generously because they don't know what they can afford to do. And, the most ironic part in all of this is people spend more time focusing on these little details around retirement, whether it's planning your next vacation, what you're going to have for lunch, than they do planning their first year of retirement. I mean that literally. I've seen it countless times. They don't know what they're spending each and every month. Again, these years, they are your dress rehearsal. So when you don't have a clear plan of where that income is going to come from, the tax impact, what fund you're going to pull it out for, you haven't stress tested. What happens if the market drops by 15 or 20% in my first couple of years of retirement? And by and large, what adjustments do I need to make? Because failing to plan is planning to fail. So now that you've seen how these final years can quite literally make or break your retirement, what I want to do is unpack two things with you. Very different things. First, the cold hard numbers, the technical financial planning of things you should be doing in these final years to add value to your plan. But number two, your mindset, right? And what it means to start mentally preparing for retirement. Now, as a retirement planner for over 10 years, these last 3 to 5 years leading up into retirement are honestly my favorite years to work with clients, because I believe this phase, you could provide so much impact in this moment, because chances are this is probably you. You know you want to retire in the next couple of years, and so you're locked in on your goals. You're more than likely earning more than you ever have in your career, which also means you could save more than you ever have in your career before, whether that's going beyond just maxing out your 401k, putting money into an HSA account or a brokerage account, right? Paying down your mortgage. And you're also at an age where the IRS actually allows you to save more once you hit 50. This is your catch-up provision, whether that's more into your IRA, your HSA, your 401k, whatever that may be. And chances are you could actually be an empty nester. Maybe you sent that last kid out to college, they graduated, your last one just got married, whatever it is. The thing is, you can now start to game plan real tangible strategies of where things are going in the next 2 to 5 years. We could start talking about things like, where are we going to take that first dollar from? What is the tax impact? How do we start to think about healthcare and Social Security? And we could start to build a real plan around it. Let's talk about the softer side of retirement, because it's not just about saving more. Yeah, we talked about that's important, but we also want to give proper credit and importance to what life is going to look like when you're no longer working, and answering questions of how do you want to spend your time? What brings you that joy, purpose, fulfillment? Because it's really easy to kick that aside and say, yeah, I'll get to that. Or I want to challenge you and say, what are the things you could be doing right now to make that transition easier? And this is where your mindset needs to start to shift a little bit of, how am I going to spend that time? Who do I want to be around? Am I in good shape? What vacations do I want to go on? What hobbies do I want to do? What causes, charities, whatever it is, how do I want to spend my time? Now, this is a really big transition, both on the planning side and, as I mentioned before, the mental side, and getting ready for what you're going to do with all your time and how you're going to fill that with purpose and fulfillment and joy and happiness and those types of things. And the earlier we can get started, the better. And so what I want to leave you with is a real actual client example. This is Mike and Sarah. Obviously, their names have been changed, but we're going to walk through their scenario and what it looks like, because they came into my office several years ago on the doorstep of retirement, and they said, hey, the market feels really shaky right now, and I don't know what to do. Where we're thinking about delaying retirement, should we go to more conservative investment accounts? What do? We feel really nervous about this, and this is where that financial planning really needs to come in. So let's take a look at where they were at, the tangible changes that we walked them through, and where they ended up, because now, spoiler alert, they're very happily retired. So Mike and Sarah, what I love about this is they have flexibility. You can see they have money in their brokerage account. This is going to be the first dollar we pull their money from in retirement, especially in early retirement, because when our only options are between this, it'd be nice if they had a Roth IRA, but they made too much, right? And a 401k, when we look at how the difference between how these are taxed, whether it's capital gains from our brokerage account or our cash, which is going to be tax-free, or ordinary income from our 401ks. Let's be really tax efficient here. As we can see with Mike and Sarah, they wanted to retire in the next couple of years. Early retirement was really important to them. They were making really good incomes. And as a result of what I talked about earlier, they were saving a ton of money. They were living well beneath their means. They knew what they wanted to spend. They knew they were going to travel. And they had some really specific goals, whether it was travel or leave money to their kids. But when I started to unpack some of the questions Mike and Sarah were asking, it sounded like they had a really good plan on paper, but they didn't get really specific on what it was that they wanted to do. As we started leaning into Mike and Sarah's plan, what became really evident and apparent to me was that they didn't know exactly what they wanted to spend each month in retirement. They were really clear on today, but then as I began to press them a little bit on what it looked like in retirement, things got a little fuzzy. They also didn't know what they wanted to spend on travel. They just knew that they wanted to travel. And I said, that's great, but hey, really cheesy dad line here. Specific is terrific. So do you want to travel once a year? Do you want to go big and go to Europe and fly first class? Or do you want to do smaller, more frequent vacations? Tell me what it is, because travel is not a goal. Traveling to Italy and going south to Sicily for 2 weeks and spending $10,000 over the course of those 2 weeks staying at first class hotels, that is very specific, right? So they also had no idea where they wanted to pull their first dollar from, and that's obviously where we come in. And so here's what we did. We took a step back and we began to ask, how much do you want to spend? Let's walk through this. Let's actually do that test drive. Let's look at how you're going to spend and how that's going to shift once you are retired. Let's also start to factor in. You're 58 now. You're going to retire at 62. You're going to have 3 years of having to pay for healthcare expenses out of pocket. This is where taking that first dollar from a brokerage or from our cash is really important, because it lowers our income. And now we could qualify potentially, when we meet with our healthcare agents, for those ACA, Affordable Health Care Act, premium subsidies. So now we have to figure out how we're going to pay for those out of pocket. So that's one extra thing we're going to build into our line item. And then what about taxes, or when does Social Security come in? Because all of these things, including how does our portfolio begin to look differently, all of these things were things when they started working with me, they hadn't accounted for. They had done a great job saving. It's like I said at the beginning of this video, without a proper plan in place, even the most perfect, well-oriented plans could come apart in the fourth quarter. And so this is where we began to build that transition plan. We modeled out different retirement scenarios, because the original plan, when we first met, they told me when we retire that we can spend the exact same amount that we're spending today. We actually want to spend more. Instead of moving, somewhere between $8,000 to $10,000 a month, we now want to spend closer to $13,000, $14,000 a month. And we actually want to go really lavish on our vacations. That's great. Let's run the numbers here, though. And so when we started to push through that, I said, hey, Mike, Sarah, your fears are actually really legitimate. Let's talk through this. What's more important to you? You said you wanted an early retirement, but the numbers that we're running really only support if we're now pushing retirement out a couple of years. What would you be willing to cut? And so what we started to model out is, okay, what does a retirement look like if there's a big market crash? We've talked earlier about in previous videos, sequence of return risk. We don't know. It's a coin flip whether or not we're going to get a good or a bad market the first couple of years. And what we need to be able to have a plan in place for is, if we continue to have that great bull run, fantastic, we could spend more. But if Armageddon happens, another 2008, declines by 20%, 25% or more, how do we have our spending plan in place, our contingency plan that tells us, well, this is how much we could spend? And so when we looked at this with Mike and Sarah, I said, hey, your plan right now, spending this much, everything has to go right. And then even then, it's a question mark. So what happens if there's a market downturn in the first year that you retire? It's not looking so hot. So what happens if we retire earlier, like you said was important to you, and now we just cut our spending by about $2,000 to $3,000 a month? Can we do that? Does $10,000 seem reasonable? And instead of that really big lavish vacation, we spend $10,000 a year and we go on smaller trips. This doesn't even begin to get into, you could go on that big lavish vacation once every couple of years, but what does it look like to have a consistent travel budget? Because you also mentioned that giving to your kids is really important. So we want to preserve that. And so this is where we presented them with options to say, hey, what's most important here? Is it spending more in retirement and living high on the hog, or is it retiring sooner and living within your means? Again, retirement, as we talked about before, it's all about having options and pulling those levers to get what's most important to you. And then once we agreed on a plan, we said, hey, let's actually back test this. What does this look like if the market doesn't do well? And what we found here is, let's actually take a little bit of a haircut. Let's move it down from $10,000 a month closer to now $7,500 a month. And guess what? We're still actually okay. And what we said is we could actually do a lot more, right? Our financial plan is more resilient than we thought. What if we cut it by, $1,500 a month? We're actually okay. So remember, it's all about having options. That's the beauty of retirement planning. So if you're in this phase, a few years out from retirement, I hope this video helped you see just how important these last few years, these transition years, these dress rehearsal years really are, both proactively of the things you need to be doing and saving more and getting ready for retirement, but also how to avoid those big mistakes. Now, the most confident retiree clients that I work with, they're not always the ones with the biggest portfolios. No, they're the ones who have a plan in place. They know what's ahead. They know what to expect. We've had these conversations and they're ready to go. And that's exactly why I created our free retirement questionnaire. You can click on the link in the survey below and it'll walk you through the same process that I use with clients at Swell Financial. And once you complete that survey, I will send you back a personalized Loom video using the information that you provided, highlighting what I see as your biggest opportunities and blind spots. So to get started, click on the description, fill out the survey, and I'll get to work. Until next time, I'll see you later.